not wanting to take loans from the international institutions was something that Zenawi pushed forward. And then moving forward, it was really Ethiopians, right, with putting in $5 billion into this dam that made it possible, which again makes it possible for Ethiopians to have some ownership of this dam. What do you make about the fact, I believe in the book it said, or in one of your articles, rather, that it's historic that Ethiopians themselves funded such a large project?
Well, I am not really uh, uh, up to date on statistics about these kinds of projects in Africa, but I can say with some confidence that this is the first time in the continent that a project of this type has been funded uh, completely by domestic funds generated by the citizens themselves, without any assistance from international organizations such as the World Bank or the IMF and foreign countries. So Ethiopians can have the right to beat their chest and tell everybody that this is a project that we finance by ourselves. That is one of the reasons why, as divided as Ethiopians are at the moment, when it comes to the GERD, they are not divided because the project belongs to them. And I think it's a very worthwhile achievement. It's something that other African countries need to look at, and understand that it is possible with political will and also salesmanship by politicians within the country. Africans can finance their own development instead of always looking abroad and waiting for some external actor to come to their help. And so I think this is one of the things that people are missing about the GERD, about this dam, is the fact that the Ethiopians were able, even with all the difficulties that they have, economic difficulties, political difficulties, infighting between ethno-linguistic groups within the country, the war between them and Eritrea, and droughts and some other problems that created a lot of difficulties for Ethiopians. They were still able to bring the dam to full completion, and I think it's an achievement that Africans should celebrate, and that in my opinion, I believe that Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia should get together and celebrate and not fight over this dam, because it is going to be a very important project for economic development, not just in Ethiopia, but also in the region.
Right. And with that said, it does beg the question, then why is there fighting if it's going to be beneficial for all three countries? I just want to sort of go through some of the frameworks that were in place. Like the 1929 agreement was between Egypt and Great Britain, 1959 between Egypt and Sudan. And then in 1999, there was a cooperative framework agreement that was trying to reconcile what was missing from those previous agreements. Sudan and Egypt did not sign that. And then recently, former President Trump tried to have an agreement of filling the dam, because the dam project, the actual dam, was already completed, but he wanted to mediate an agreement about filling the dam. That didn't happen, you say, because Ethiopia said this is just a regurgitation of the previous agreements that didn't really have our own interest in mind. So with that layout, my question to you is, there's the majority of the water from the Nile River does come from Ethiopia. The Nile River runs through 11 countries. But what the book also says, and articles you've written that say, is whether Ethiopia has this dam or not, it doesn't actually affect the water that Egypt is able to get. Is that correct?
Well, the thing is that, as Ethiopians have made clear, is that the dam is an electric generation, is a dam to generate electricity. So once the dam is filled, there should not be any significant impact on water flowing into Sudan and Egypt. And so at the moment the fight is over, how long it will take to fill the dam. And that is why the Egyptians wanted an agreement, because the Ethiopians wanted to fill the dam in less than 7 years so that they could proceed with generation of electricity. But the Egyptians wanted the process prolonged for up to 20 years. And the Ethiopians said no. So that was one of the first problems regarding why they couldn't come to agreement.
So I want to explore that a little bit. Why? So Egypt wants it to be prolonged because then if it's filled and hydropower is possible, and then it could also create more agriculture and then compete with Egypt. I mean, or is why does Egypt need it to take longer?
Well, the idea is that geologists argue that if you take longer to fill the dam, then the damage to if there's any damage to the downstream countries, that is Sudan and Egypt, if there's any damage to the downstream countries, it will be minimized. So the longer it takes to fill the dam, the less likely there will be damage in terms of water flows to the downstream countries. But the shorter the period that is taken to fill the dam, the 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 more there is the danger that you would interrupt water flows to the downstream countries. Uh, uh, the, the Ethiopians have already started filling the dam. They started in 2020. So they usually fill the dam during the rainy season, which occurs during the months of July, June, July, August, and maybe a little part of September. And they filled the dam in 2020, and the rainy season was quite significant, so there wasn't very much damage or impact on water flows to the downstream countries. The same issue happened in 2021. They are now beginning the third filling. They should have started in July with the third filling. And it was expected, at least that's what the Ethiopians said, it was expected that that same filling would not have significant impact on the downstream countries. But the downstream countries, particularly Egypt, wanted an agreement, but for filling and management, 2 points: to fill the dam, and after the dam was filled, how to manage the dam. And the Ethiopians did not sign the agreement that was negotiated by the US. And part of the reason, and of course, there was also an attempt by the African Union to help the three countries come up with an agreement. They negotiated in Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, and that agreement did not work. It failed. And what many people need to understand was that part of the reason it failed was that the Egyptians and the Sudanese insisted that the baseline for negotiations, of any negotiation for filling the dam and managing the dam, the baseline had to be what the Egyptians referred to as their acquired rights, historically acquired rights. Those are the rights that were given to them by the 1929 agreement and then reinforced by the 1959 agreement. So if you look at the 1959 agreement, the introduction of the agreement, the preamble to the agreement specifically talks of Egypt's acquired rights and Sudan's acquired rights. And those acquired rights were defined in the 1959 agreement as 55.5 billion cubic meters of water to Egypt and 18.5 billion cubic meters of water to Sudan, and 10 billion left over for evaporation and seepage. And that completely exhausts the 84 billion cubic meters of water that represent the average annual flow of water in the Nile. So one of the reasons why the Ethiopians did not cooperate in that discussion was the fact that the Egyptians insisted that any negotiation has to allow those historically acquired rights to be the baseline. And so if you are Ethiopia, you will be asking yourself, if that is true, then what are we negotiating over? Because there is no water left over to negotiate, since that 1959 agreement essentially exhausts all the waters of the Nile. And so that's there was another issue. And that issue was the fact that Egypt also demanded that after the Nile goes, the GERD goes into full operation, Egypt should be allowed to have a monitoring station at the GERD in Ethiopia, so that they could take active part in determining how the GERD was managed. And Ethiopians basically said no, that would be giving up sovereignty to Egypt by allowing Egyptians to come into their country and determine policy regarding how they manage their natural resources. And so those are some of the reasons why the three countries were not able to come to an agreement, and also why the agreement designed by the US was initial by Sudan and Egypt, but not by Ethiopia.
So I want to explore this idea of natural rights that Egypt was talking about, because it appears that their naturally acquired rights goes against nature in a sense. And this is what I mean by that. So that agreement gives Egypt and Sudan a certain amount of water, and then it leaves the rest for evaporation. So from what I understand, talking to some officials, some GERD officials, whether they use this water that is literally raining down into the country or not, and actually use it to fill a dam, this water is coming down. So it's either going to be wasted or it's going to be utilized, right? And
Yes. What Egypt is saying is that under international law, Ethiopia cannot prevent the water from coming to Egypt, even though the water originates in Ethiopia. Because the Nile is a transboundary or an international water course. International law says that Ethiopia, which is an upstream country, cannot prevent Egypt from having access to that water. So what the Ethiopians are saying is, we in defending themselves, the Ethiopians are saying, we are not trying to prevent the water from coming to you. We just want you to understand that you have been using this water for thousands of years without interruption from us. Now it's time for us to use the water, but we are going to do it based on international law principles, and we are going to use it in a reasonable way and in an equitable way. That is one of the, if you look at the 2005 agreement that was signed between, there was a core principles that were signed between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia in Khartoum by the heads of states of the three countries. In that particular agreement, it said that the three countries were going to use the water based on international law principles, and those principles were no harm to the downstream countries, or no significant harm to the downstream countries. In other words, Ethiopia would agree not to inflict any significant harm on the downstream countries, and each country would use the water in an equitable and reasonable way. Now, the Ethiopians are saying that when they build a dam and fill the dam, they would be able to use the water in an equitable and reasonable way. But what the Egyptians are saying is that any interruption in the 55.5 billion cubic meters that they are supposed to get based on the 1959 agreement is not reasonable and is not equitable. And so that's where you have the disagreement, because the Ethiopians say you can't expect us to provide more than 85% of the water going to the Nile and tell us we cannot use any of it. Because if we allow you to use the 55.5 billion that you are saying, then there will be none left for us to use.
Hey everybody, please support independent journalism by going to patreon.com/HermelaTV and becoming a member. Thank you so much for your support.